learn Japanese history.
We are your navigators, Taro and Hanako.
Welcome, especially if you're joining us from universities overseas, maybe just getting into Japanese history. Today, we're tackling a really huge topic.
Yeah, a pivotal moment, you could say. The Taika reforms.
Exactly, and this wasn't just like tweaking a few laws. It fundamentally reshaped Japan.
It really did. And to get why it was so major, you kind of have to picture the scene back then, 7th century East Asia.
Right, what was going on?
Well, the big player was the Tang dynasty in China, super powerful, sophisticated governance, and they were definitely projecting that influence outwards.
Especially onto the Korean peninsula, I imagine.
Definitely. And things there were, let's say, complicated. You had Goguryeo, Baekje, and Silla all vying for power.
Not exactly stable neighbors.
Not at all. Lots of tension, and that instability inevitably, rippled over towards Japan.
Okay, so external pressure's building.
Yep.
But wasn't there stuff going on inside Japan, too?
Oh, absolutely. Internally, the Soga clan had become incredibly powerful. Think Soga no Emishi and his son Iruka.
Yes. They were really trying to dominate, weren't they?
Pretty much monopolized control. It got to the point where they actually attacked Prince Yamashiro.
Wow, that's bold. Must have caused a lot of bad blood with other powerful families.
You bet. So you've got this mix, this volatile situation, external threats, internal power grabs. The stage was definitely set for some kind of change.
So who were the key people pushing for that change?
Well, some important figures were the students who'd actually been to Sui and Tang China.
Right, they'd seen a different way of doing things.
Exactly. They came back with knowledge of these really organized legal and administrative systems, the whole Ritzery setup, a completely different model.
That must have been eye-opening. And back in Japan, any key players domestically?
Definitely. Nakatomi no Kamatari, who later becomes Fujiwara no Kamatari, he had this vision, a more centralized state based on law, not just clan power.
Okay, ambitious.
And crucially, he teamed up with Prince Nakanuche. You might know him better as Emperor Tenji later on.
Ah, right. And they both had issues with the Soga clan.
They certainly did. That shared opposition was kind of the spark.
The spark that led to?
The Ishii incident, the coup in 645. The Soga leadership, Emishi and Iruka, were taken down forcefully.
A massive shakeup then. What happened right after?
Things moved fast. Emperor Kotoku took the throne.
Okay, new emperor.
And guess who got the key positions? Prince Naka no Shi became crown prince, and Kamatari was made inner minister.
So the coup leaders were now running the show.
Pretty much. And they brought in experts, too. Remember those scholars back from China?
Sogen and Takamuko no Kuromaru.
That's them. They were appointed as national doctors, basically policy advisors, tasked with helping implement this new Tang-style system.
Makes sense. Bringing in the know-how.
And to top it all off, they adopted the very first official era name, Taika.
Meaning great change. Very symbolic.
Exactly, signaling this was a whole new beginning.
So the new team's in place. What was the actual plan, the great change itself?
Well, the core ideas were laid out in the Reform Edict, issued the next year, 646. It had 4 main points, really ambitious stuff.
Okay, let's break them down. Pillar 1.
Land and people. This was radical. It basically abolished the old system of private ownership of land and people by the imperial family and the big clans.
Whoa, hold on. Even the imperial family's private lands.
Yep. The idea was to establish Shuchikumen, public land, public citizens, everything theoretically belonged to the state, headed by the emperor.
That is a huge shift in thinking and power. How did they get the powerful clans to accept that?
Good question. They didn't just take everything without compensation. Powerful clans were given stipends, shukuho, based on their rank. It likely softened the blow.
Ah, okay. A pragmatic move, so pillar 2.
Administrative structure. Setting up a proper system, central government overseeing the capital and surrounding provinces, or kanai, and then local administrative districts called gun.
So, replacing the old clan territories with centrally controlled districts.
That was the goal. And standardizing things like the military and, importantly, transportation networks. Building a unified state structure.
Got it. Pillar 3.
Registration and taxation. You can't have a centralized state without knowing who your people are and how to tax them, right?
Makes sense.
So they ordered the creation of household registers, koseki, and population records, kichu, detailed records.
And these records were the key to the next step.
Exactly. They were the basis for implementing the allotment land system, the hand and shuju.
How did that work?
Based on the registers, the state would allot farmland to individuals, theoretically for life. Though the land still technically belonged to the emperor, it aimed for fairer distribution and, crucially, a reliable tax base.
Okay, land distribution tied to population records.
Yeah.
And the final pillar, Pillar 4.
A new tax system, a revised system, including levies paid in goods, in kind, known as ju.
So, public land, central administration, population registers, and a new tax system. That's a massive overhaul.
Absolutely, a complete blueprint for a different kind of Japan.
But blueprints are one thing, actually building it is another. Did this all happen overnight?
Oh, definitely not. Putting these reforms into practice across the whole country, that took decades. Lots of adjustments, lots of challenges along the way.
Right. And just to clarify the names, the coup itself is the Ishii incident.
Yeah, named after the year, 645.
And the Taika reforms refer to the whole series of changes under Emperor Kotoku that followed.
Generally, yes. That's how historians usually use the terms. The incident was the spark. The reforms were the fire that reshaped things.
Okay. So the reforms are underway, but you mentioned challenges. Was it smooth sailing after the edict?
Far from it, actually. There was quite a bit of instability. Disagreements cropped up within the court itself.
Power struggles didn't just disappear, I guess.
Nope. And things got complicated enough that the capital was actually moved from Asuka to Naniwa, near modern Osaka.
A physical move.
Why? Well, it seems tied to growing friction between the main players, particularly Prince Nakano and Emperor Kotoku. It got so bad that Nakano eventually packed up and went back to Asuka.
Leaving the emperor in Naniwa. That sounds like a major split.
It was, and sadly, Emperor Kotoku died in Naniwa not long after. It was a period of real flux.
And didn't something happen with Kotoku's son as well?
Yes, Prince Arima. He was later accused of plotting rebellion and executed. It just highlights the tensions simmering beneath the surface as this new order was trying to establish itself.
Tough times. So, after Kotoku's death and Nakano's return to Asuka, who took charge?
Emperor Kotoku's predecessor, who was also Nakanogi's mother, reascended the throne as Empress Saimei.
Okay. And what was her reign like?
Interesting. It was marked by some really large-scale construction projects, but also major military campaigns, expeditions against the Emishi people up north, led by Abe no Hirafu.
So, still dealing with internal conflicts and asserting central authority.
Seems like it. Continuing instability, perhaps, even with the reforms technically in place.
And while all this was happening internally, what about that external situation in Korea? It hadn't gone away, had it?
No, it was actually heating up significantly. Silla was making serious moves to unify the peninsula, and crucially, they allied with Tang China.
Silla and the Tang dynasty together. That's a powerful combination.
Extremely powerful. And their target was Baekje, the kingdom Japan had long-standing ties with. In 660, Baekje fell.
That must have sent shockwaves through the Japanese court, losing a key ally like that.
Absolutely. There was real alarm. Japan felt compelled to act. They sent troops to help the Baekje resistance fighters who were still holding out.
Trying to prop up their old ally? How did that go?
Not well at all. In 663, there was a massive naval battle, the Battle of Hakusukino.
Hakusukino, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's known by different names in Korean and Chinese sources too, but the outcome was the same, a crushing defeat for the Japanese and Baekje forces against the Tang-Silla alliance.
A decisive loss then.
Totally decisive. It basically ended any significant Japanese influence on the Korean peninsula for centuries. A major strategic blow.
Wow. And what happened to the rest of Korea after that?
Well, with Baekje gone, the Tang-Silla forces turned on Goguryeo. By 668, Goguryeo had fallen too.
So Silla, backed by Tang, had unified most of the peninsula.
Exactly. Suddenly, Japan had a unified, powerful, and potentially hostile neighbor right across the sea.
Okay, that changes everything. How did Japan react? Specifically, Prince Nakanoye, who seemed to be the driving force.
He reacted decisively. The focus shifted immediately to defense, bolstering Japan's borders against a potential invasion from Silla or Tang.
What kind of defenses?
Serious fortifications, things like Mizuki, which is basically a huge water fortress, and Yamashiro mountain castles, built near Dazaifu in northern Kyushu. That was the front line.
Makes sense. Fortifying the likely landing spot.
Right. And they set up border guards, the Sakimori, on islands like Tsushima and in Kyushu itself. An early warning system, and first line of defense.
So a real mobilization for defense. Any other big moves?
Yes. In 667, the capital was moved again, this time to Utsu, near Lake Biwa, Humi Province. Probably seen as a more defensible location further inland.
Another capital relocation. And fortifications were built elsewhere too.
Yeah, in various strategic spots across western Japan, it was a concerted effort to secure the realm.
And it was amidst all this defensive activity that Nakanoshi finally became emperor.
Correct. In 668, he formally ascended the throne as Emperor Tenji.
Taking the helm during a crisis. Did his reign bring more stability or further changes?
Well, he continued the process of state building. A major step was promulgating the Simi Code.
The Shiniko, what was that?
It's considered Japan's first proper, comprehensive set of laws and administrative ordinances, the Ritsuri system taking concrete legal form.
Formalizing the structure they'd been building since the reforms began.
Exactly, a crucial step. And another big administrative move came in 670, the creation of the Kugo-year register.
A register, like the earlier household registers.
Similar idea, but this was the first truly nationwide census, a systematic count of the entire population.
Why do a nationwide census right then?
Think about it. If you're worried about defense, building fortifications, maybe raising an army, you need to know exactly who and what resources you have.
Right. Manpower for labor, military service, and of course, taxation to pay for it all.
Precisely. It was about strengthening domestic administration, getting a firm grip on the population and resources, especially in light of those external threats. It all ties together: the laws, the census, the defenses.
It paints a picture of a state really getting organized, fast, under pressure. Were there other large-scale projects during Tenji's time?
Oh yes, something quite remarkable actually. Large-scale road construction.
Roads, like major highways.
You could almost say that. Archaeological work has uncovered these incredibly straight roads, sometimes up to 12 meters wide, cutting across plains, even through hills, often with ditches alongside.
12 meters wide. That's huge for the 7th century. What were they for?
Well, the straightness, the width, it strongly suggests rapid communication and military movement.
Connecting back to the defense concerns again. Moving troops quickly.
That's the leading theory, getting messages and soldiers from the capital to strategic points, especially towards Kyushu, efficiently.
Were there facilities along these roads?
Yes, on major routes like the Sanyu Road heading west, they established post stations Ikika with supplies and horses ready for official travelers or messengers.
A whole infrastructure for communication and logistics. But who built all this?
That's the downside. The burden of constructing these massive roads and maintaining the post stations likely fell heavily on the local populations along the routes. A huge public works project, but with significant costs for ordinary people.
So the capital move, the census, the laws, the roads, the fortifications. It sounds like a massive national effort in crisis management mode after Hakusukino.
That's a very good way to put it. A concerted push to strengthen and unify the realm in the face of perceived danger. Though interestingly, over time, as threats perhaps subsided or changed, some of these big roads fell into disuse.
Fascinating. A snapshot of intense state building. But even with all this effort under Emperor Tenji, his death caused problems, didn't it?
It did indeed. It triggered another major upheaval, a succession dispute.
Not again.
Yep. In 672, the year after Tenji died, the Jinshin War broke out.
The Jinshin War. Who was fighting whom?
It pitted Emperor Tenji's son and chosen heir, Prince Tomo, against Tenji's younger brother, Prince Shama.
Brother versus nephew. Was it just a family feud?
No, it quickly drew in wider support. Powerful clans and local officials took sides, often based on their own interests or dissatisfaction with Tenji's policies.
So regional powers got involved.
Oh yeah. Clans from provinces like Mino, Owari, Ise, they backed Prince Shama, who seemed to represent a different faction, perhaps those less favored under Tenji.
And who came out on top?
After some intense fighting, Prince Shama, the brother, was victorious.
Another turn in the road. What happened after Shama won?
He didn't waste time. In 673, he ascended the throne as Emperor Tenmu. He set up his court back in Asuka at the Kiyomihara Palace.
So back to Asuka. And Tenmu's reign would then build on everything that came before.
Exactly. He continued the process of centralization, building on the Taika reforms and the Imi Code, but now shaped by his own rise to power through the Jinshin War and the need to consolidate his rule.
Wow, what a turbulent century. So looking back at this whole period, the Taika reforms were clearly more than just that initial edict.
Absolutely. It's this whole era of transformation, kicked off by the coup, defined with a reform edict, but then shaped by internal struggles, external threats like Hakusukino, and culminating in the consolidation under Tenmu. It really laid the foundations for the classical Japanese state.
The key takeaways seem to be that shift to public land and citizens, setting up the central administration, the registers and taxes.
And crucially, those defensive measures and infrastructure projects driven by the international situation.
It really shows how internal politics and external pressures can be so deeply intertwined.
Definitely. And it's fascinating, isn't it, how that threat from powerful neighbors Tang China, unified Silla, kind of ironically forced Japan to unify and develop its own state structures much faster than it might have otherwise.
That's a great point. That external pressure acting as an internal catalyst. It makes you wonder, how often does that happen in history, where a threat actually speeds up development or consolidation? Something for you all to think about.